Hi everyone, my name is John. Welcome back to my channel. I have a book that I want to talk about today that I read last year, I think in August and September, with some people from the Historathon Discord. There were probably maybe 6 or 8 of us. And this was my first time with this author, and it was a really, really great experience. So I wanted to make extra sure to talk about this. This is a name and a book that I think most people already know about. If you're familiar with history, definitely if you watch the nonfiction side of BookTube. But it is this. It is Robert K. Massie's Peter the Great, His Life and World. Excuse the half price book sticker there. But I found this a while back, and it had been sitting on a bookshelf for a while, and I thought Historathon last year would be a great time to read it with some other wonderful people, so we did. Peter Massie's name is kind of synonymous with engaging, well-written biographies of Russian monarchs. Excuse me. He's also written a biography of Catherine the Great and a couple of books about Nicholas the second, and another one maybe on the last days of the of the of Tsarist Russia, basically, and then another one on maybe the identification of some of the remains or something of the royal family. I haven't read any of the ones about surrounding the October Revolution, so this is my only, like I said, book so far. And at 850 pages, the book seems like it might be kind of an unwieldy size for someone who only lived to be 52 years old. But above and beyond detailing only Peter's life, it's also a really great picture into the diplomatic, the military, and the social world, of which there were far too few popular historical accounts, I think, of the late 17th and early 18th century early Romanov Russian aristocracy and the world that it was ensconced in. Peter was born in 1672 to Tsar Alexei and his second wife, whose name was Natalia. And their family was plagued with a series of young boys who had died early in childhood, creating a kind of succession crisis. When he was just nine, put yourself in his position here, Peter got one of his first tastes of realpolitik when Russia's elite imperial military guard, which is called the Streltsy, violently revolted against the sitting royal family, even killing dozens of his friends and family members in front of his own eyes. Just a few months later, Peter and his half-brother, Ivan V, were both coronated together and shared power. But because of Peter's young age and because of Ivan's severe physical and intellectual impairments, their sister Sophia ruled as regent for 7 years. And when Ivan died, too, at a very early age, Peter was left as the sole ruler of Russia at just the age of 23. And from really early on, Peter displayed a tremendous intellectual energy and precocity, eagerness to learn about ideas and technology, especially about shipbuilding, which plays a pretty prominent role in the book. But the Russian aristocracy at the end of the 17th century was very different from the way we imagine those of other Western European countries at around the same time. Instead of being eager to form political alliances using marriage and other dynastic tools, the Russian royal family was insular, to say the least, very suspicious of outside influence in their country. You might even say downright xenophobic. The conservative boyars, or aristocrats, who supported Peter's ascendancy would never have anticipated not only modernization, but constitutionalism, even if it was a kind of constitutionalism that existed uneasily alongside Peter's overtly autocratic tendencies. And he did have some autocratic tendencies. Uh, we'll learn about those in a bit. Though his relentless energy and endless curiosity, through his relentless energy and endless curiosity, Peter's singular vision was to drag his country, kicking and screaming, into the 18th century, which he did. Massie does a really good job of highlighting not only what happened in Russia, but also on the broader European stage, in the rest of Western Europe. For 18 months, starting in March of 1697, Peter embarked on what is called the Great Embassy, during which he visited Prussia, Holland, Austria, and England, mostly for the purposes of strengthening diplomatic relationships against the looming strength of the Ottoman Empire. He spent his time there, made it even more obvious that there was a widening developmental gulf that separated Western Europe from his own country. Looming in the background for this whole time was the Swedish king, Charles XII. When Sweden was an empire at this time, its expansion was a threat to the Russian state. The gigantic set piece, which takes up about a third of Massie's book, the middle third specifically, is the Great Northern War, which lasted for 21 years, from 1700 to 1721, and consumed 2 decades of Peter's life, but ultimately ended with a Russian coalition victory and the Treaty of Neustadt, which definitively ended Sweden's imperial ambitions and saw the flourishing, really one of the high points, the burgeoning of the Russian Empire. I've made my distaste for military history known on this channel before, so the blow-by-blow recounting of tactical maneuvering and this regiment moving from this location to that on this time of day and the weather and all of that is one of the few things I could have done without in the book, but I can understand why it's there. Like I said, it was a sizable part of his time as Tsar, and he was on the battlefield calling the shots for much of the time. So its prominence in the book is justified, but it was not my favorite part of the book, by far. What wasn't on my Peter the Great bingo card, I guess, was how he treated his only son, whose name was Alexei, who was being groomed to eventually become Tsar. Alexei bristled against his father's reformist ways, and he wasn't very interested in governing at all. He scandalized the Russian aristocracy by fleeing all the way to Austria. Not exactly a short trip to get away from his father and the expectations that Peter had of him. And after coaxing Alexei back to Russia under the false pretenses of never punishing him, Peter tortured several of Alexei's friends to death on the wheel, forced him into a sham trial where the verdict was a foregone conclusion, found him to be a traitor of the state, and summarily had him whipped to death. His own son, just for not wanting to take on the mantle of power after his father died. Not just for that, but also probably for running away and being not a good son, I'm sure, is what Peter would have said. And while I can't speak to Massie's books about Peter the Great or Nicholas II, sorry, Catherine the Great, or Nicholas II. The book on Peter is a really great contribution to the art of biography. It's a testament to how much a book about someone can not only tell you about their personal life, but unlock a whole world of what the early Romanov dynasty was all about. It's really immersive. It's written with the flair of a novelist and the attention to detail of a novelist, marred only, at least for me, like I said, by the long foray into the very granular details of the Great Northern War between the Swedish Empire and Peter. But if military history interests you too, along with the cultural history and the development of Russia, around 300 years ago, this might be the perfect biography. It's really, really, really good. I finally know what everyone was talking about when they were bragging about Robert K. Massie. It was for good reason. This is Robert K. Massie's Peter the Great, his life and world and glare on the book cover there. But yes, if you ever see a copy of it and you're up for 850 pages of it, definitely something to consider. We don't see a lot of Russian history of this era that's getting popularly published. Most Russian history is 20th century, it seems like. So this is a good way to learn something about Russian history that's not from the 20th century. I really enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye.